What's up, everybody, and welcome to my UFC 252 preview show. My name is Danny Segura. I am a mixed martial arts reporter for MMAJunkie.com, and joining me to break down all the action from UFC 252 is one of the baddest bantamweights today. I would say the baddest member of the MMA Beat panel. It is Brian Boom Kelleher. Brian, what's up, brother? How are you?
Boom. What's going on, man? How's everything?
I'm doing well. So we got a pretty big card coming up, UFC 252. I feel like we haven't felt like a big card in a while. I don't know if you agree. What are your feelings overall entering this pay-per-view here?
Yeah, I think this has definitely got big vibes to it, especially with DC, quote unquote retirement fight, and then you got OMalley, who's obviously a big star in the making, and a lot of fun matchups and a good main card, definitely.
Yeah, and I know we're just coming off UFC 251, which was obviously a big card, but in these pandemic days, I don't know how you're feeling, but a day feels like 2 weeks. So that to me just feels like it was like a year ago. So that's what I mean when I say, it's been quite a while since we haven't seen like a big card.
Yeah, I know. I feel like that too. Time just slows down, But as far as like the summer goes, I feel like the summer is just flying by because we've been quarantined and staying in, and just like the days are just passing. I'm losing track.
It is a mix of I guess it can be a mix of both. Everything just kind of becomes a blur too.
Yeah.
All right, man. Well, let's get into it. Pretty big card. So headlining this event is a trilogy bout, heavyweight bout between Stipe Miocic, the current champ, and challenger Daniel Cormier. Obviously, a big heavyweight bout. A lot of talk has been made in the last few weeks that this bout will determine, for one, the baddest man on the planet, which that usually by default always just goes to the heavyweight champion. So that's kind of a no-brainer. But a lot of people are saying that this could be for the greatest heavyweight of at least UFC heavyweight of all time. What are your thoughts on that? Do you think that's at stake here? Do you think they're fighting for not only a championship here, but to claim who is the greatest UFC heavyweight of all time?
Yeah, it could be, because this trilogy is definitely huge right now. I think, 1-1, DC, potentially retiring after this fight, especially if he gets a win and going out on top. We don't see that a lot. We've seen that with George St. Pierre, and that's about it. So I think that would be a huge statement if he could do that. These are definitely the 1 and 2 top guys. But, things have to play out at heavyweight. You never know if Jon Jones comes up and does something big up there. I think that could kind of shut that talk down. But yeah, this fight definitely has big stakes on it with DC potentially retiring.
Yeah, for sure. And also, quick parentheses here before we keep talking about the fight. We'll be taking your questions at the end of the stream. So if you got questions, feel free to start throwing them on the chat, and we'll address them in the later part of this video. All right, so real quick, this one's a weird one because I feel like the first fight obviously was very dominant for Daniel Cormier, and to be honest, like after that happened, you can maybe throw me in the pack that I'm maybe a Stipe hater. I'm certainly not I don't think so, but certainly not eliminating that. But for me, it was like, Stipe deserved no rematch whatsoever. It was a first round knockout. It was pretty dominant. There's other contenders, right? Like Stipe, again, I think the world of him. I think he's a fantastic fighter, but I didn't feel like he deserved that rematch. Well, he gets the rematch. Brock Lesnar doesn't end up coming back to MMA. And then he puts on an amazing performance. So I was definitely wrong. There was clearly a second story to that fight. And then we saw it play out, and it was like, it's a weird one because, yes, Stipe Miocic pulled off an incredible comeback victory. The adjustments that he made attacking the body were amazing. But, like, I also got to say, that low-key was kind of one of Daniel Cormier's most, like, best performances, I would say, as well, despite him losing. I don't know how you feel about that. How do you feel about their last combat and kind of how they both size each other up?
Yeah, I kind of see it that way too. It was interesting because like the first fight, DC clear cut knocks him out, puts a statement on, finishes him. And then they give him the rematch, I guess, based off a title defense is what he's done in the past. But in the rematch, I really thought DC was having a lot of success early on and was really winning most of the fight until those body shots came into play. And I think that was a big factor of game plan and discipline. I think DC kind of fell off. He got a little bit cocky and had his hands down and was kind of walking forward. And then he started taking those body shots, and they just added up, and then Stipe put him away. For me, skill for skill, I feel like DC is a little bit ahead,
Hmm.
especially if he can come into this fight more disciplined and enforce that wrestling, which is where he's obviously better than Stipe. I think he could have a lot of success.
Yeah. And I was speaking from a technical standpoint. I think the first fight we learned that one, DC can crack, right? And Stipe can go down, which he
Yeah.
did. Then the second one we learned that, I mean, we kind of already knew this, but I feel like that cemented it. Cormier does have issues taking shots to the body. I think Anderson Silva exposed that a little bit with a few kicks. We kind of seen glimpses of it, but I think it was pretty clear in this fight, like he might not take body shots as well as others. And also, we saw Cormier, having trouble later in the fight. There's talk about maybe him being a heavyweight and him being that big. Maybe that hindered his gas tank and his cardio. As a technical standpoint, leading into this fight, like, let's start with Miocic since he's the champion. Like, what are his keys to victory here? Like, if you were his coach, what do you think he should do for this bout with Daniel Cormier?
Yeah, I think for Stipe, keeping Cormier at distance, maybe utilizing that calf kick, slowing Cormier down a little bit because he's going to try to be pressuring him and closing the distance. I feel like the small cage might play a factor. I think Stipe needs to utilize his jab, his reach, try to keep Cormier away a little bit. And footwork is going to be a key factor in this fight to me. I feel like for Stipe to be moving laterally really well is going to be a big success for him, especially with somebody who wants to kind of close the distance, corner you off and take you down. So I think if I'm Stipe's coach, I say, listen, keep your footwork going, utilize your jab early on, maybe a few calf kicks in there. You don't want to throw anything high and get caught with a kick from a wrestler. But yeah, definitely moving really well and utilizing your jab, straight punches, and I think that should keep him safer with the wrestling.
Yeah. And for Cormier, I mean, as I said, I thought his bout with Miocic, the second one, even though he lost, I thought it was one of his better performances. Like, prior to his demise in, I believe, the fourth round, he was piecing up Miocic. I thought his striking looked great, but it feels like everyone is encouraging and suggesting Cormier to wrestle Stipe in this matchup. Do you think that's a strategy here? Do you think that's what Cormier has to do in this trilogy about?
I think it's definitely a big focus for DC's camp, just because they want to play it safe here, right? Retirement fight, go out on top. There's a lot of pressure to that, too. I think DC knows that that's where he is going to have his easiest success in the fight is to just wrestle and grind out a victory and maybe, ground and pound, something like that. He's the better wrestler, and I think he knows that. He even said, Stipe, bring your wrestling shoes. But we don't know if that could be some kind of psychological
Yeah.
warfare because DC did knock him out that first fight. And when you knock someone out, you get addicted to that feeling. You kind of want to do it again. And he has power to do so. So I do think DC is going to come into this fight with a heavy wrestling style. But I think we're going to see some striking too. I think he's going to try to get in close and clinch, and he throws good, dirty boxing strikes in there, so that could be a factor as well.
Yeah, for sure. And you mentioned it there for a split second. This cage is smaller. This is obviously in Vegas. This is at the UFC Apex, so the cage is going to be much smaller than the one we're used to seeing championship bouts in. You fought in that cage, and you've also obviously fought in the bigger cage as well. Is there really a difference? Like, obviously one's bigger than the other, but once you're fighting in there, does it actually influence your strategy and give you a different feel for the fight than a bigger cage would?
Yeah, for me personally, I definitely felt it. When you get in the cage and you look across at your opponent, they feel much closer than
Right.
usual. So I think it definitely enforces more of a close distance fight. But you do have enough room in there to move if that's your style. I really think stylistically is and game plan wise, it could play a factor depending on what you want to do. If you want to close the distance on your opponent, it's going to be a little bit easier to do so, I feel. But also for a guy who likes to strike in the pocket, it's easier to get yourself into that close distance to do
Yeah.
that striking wise as well. So I think it can benefit both fighters. It's really about implementing your game plan and just enforcing your plan on the other person.
Do you think the size of the cage will benefit either fighter more than the other?
I think if DC's coming with heavy wrestling in his game plan, that it can benefit him for sure. Because Stipe's not the fastest guy either, and I don't really think, even though I said I think he should bring fast footwork and a lot of it, I don't know if he has quick enough feet to really avoid a guy like DC who can get in there, get dirty boxing going, and enforce wrestling. He has a great single leg where he can pick you up with a high crotch and slam you. We've seen that in the last fight. I think it's going to favor DC a little bit with his style.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so too. But I'm curious to see how that looks as well. You might correct me on this, but it almost feels like takedowns against the cage, it just seems like some wrestlers struggle more with than out in the open. I don't know if you disagree with that, but obviously we see, at least from my personal experience watching fights, I see a lot of stalling, a lot of hitting the cage and then just staying there. So I wonder if that's going to help, Miocic defend takedowns as well,
It could. Yeah, that's a good point. I do feel that the cage is a big factor when it comes to takedown defense. Sometimes it helps guys offensively too. You can bump guys off the cage to get under their legs and create leverage like that. But I do think defensively it's definitely a way bigger factor, because it's hard to really run a guy and utilize like power doubles and singles to doubles. There's a lot of short light strikes happening in there that kind of reset you and throw you off your game, and it's very strenuous too. When you're looking for a takedown on the cage and you're not successful on that first effort, that second attempt, it's draining. So it almost makes you want to kind of separate and strike and re-enter. So it definitely could play a factor in this fight.
Yeah, for sure. And then another storyline, this is outside of sort of the technical perspective, is retirement. This is a weird one because at the same, we're talking about potentially whoever wins becoming the greatest UFC heavyweight of all time, but we're also talking about two fighters that are close to kind of ending their career, or so it feels like. If you had to put some money on it, who do you think retires after that bout? And do you think both retire? Do you think only Cormier? How do you see that playing out as far as the future for both men?
Yeah, I don't really hear too much about Stipe wanting to retire after this fight. I do believe DC to an extent. I think money talks, obviously, and you're always going to have that Jon Jones mystique out there. I'm sure he really would like to get that one back, no matter what he says. Would Jon Jones come to heavyweight? If DC wins and Jon Jones is willing to come up to heavyweight, that's a huge fight to make, a big money fight. And who knows what they try to lure out there for DC? Maybe bring him back for that big fight, Brock Lesnar fight. There's always that potential. I think DC does want to go out with a win, and I think if he has a big win in this fight, he'll be content with, settling with retirement after that. But I don't think Stipe retires unless he gets a brutal knockout again, and maybe he's, thinking more about safety and being a family man and stuff like that. He does have that firefighter job that he can rely on. So you never know, but I lean more towards DC if I was going to put my money on it.
Yeah. And you mentioned it there. I think that's what it's going to come down to for either guy. For me, it's like I think obviously DC has talked about retirement a lot, so it's pretty clear that that's in his mind, and it seems that this is his last fight. But a fight with Jon Jones moving up to heavyweight, champ versus champ fight, a guy that you lost to twice previously in the past, and now you get the opportunity to fight him in a weight class where you're performing better and you got more power and you're just all around a better fighter. That's a pretty enticing offer. Also, pandemic, we know that the pay-per-view buys and sort of just the views of the UFC being one of the strongest sports around at this time, that's helped visibility and as well, people buying pay-per-views and all that. That to me is a super enticing offer. The money, big fight, championship money, also big pay-per-view rivalry with Jon Jones, and you get to kind of an opportunity to sort of right that wrong. And look, if he were to win, it'd be one no contest, and then one for DC. So it'd be even, right, across the board, right? So I really have my doubts about DC retiring, to be quite frank.
Yeah, I kind of feel you on that. I mean, especially with the Jon Jones thing. I mean, that would be legendary stuff if Jon Jones came up and you're talking champ versus champ. I mean, it doesn't get any better than that. You know, when two guys have a title on the line, the mystique to that, especially with the pandemic and the pay-per-views that could sell. I mean, when they dangle that coin in front of DC, you know, he's got kids, he's got his wife, a family to take care of. It's just like it's hard to turn that down. Like one more, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah, I agree. And also Jon Jones, obviously I think he's one of the greatest, but being honest, he has looked a little bit flat in his last couple performances. Certainly not what he was looking like when he was coming up through the rankings in those first title defenses where he was just running through people. So that's also enticing as well, right? Like, this seems a much more vulnerable Jon Jones, I would say. And it's funny because he's still champion and he's still wrecking people, but compared to, I guess, his previous version. And I think the same thing goes with Stipe Miocic. I don't know if you agree, but like there was a little bit of buzz maybe like a year or so when Jones was kind of, talking smack to him online and all that, and a potential move to, have a champ versus champ fight. And this time, with a true heavyweight, I'm not saying DC's not a true heavyweight, but someone that's fought at 205 before. So it'd be like a true heavyweight fighting Stipe Miocic. I also think that'd be a big fight for him, one that Jones would be interested in. And I feel like one that would, if Stipe would have plans of retiring, one option that would keep him from going that direction. I think it works both ways.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, Stipe, he's not going to turn down that opportunity either to fight a guy like Jon Jones for, best ever status pretty much. And then like you said, Jon Jones's performances have been kind of dwindling slightly, and to come up to heavyweight is a risky move, to fight bigger guys that pack that power. And that's a fresh matchup for Jones too. So I think that would be very intriguing for him to test himself at heavyweight, also with a fresh matchup in Stipe, someone he's never faced before.
Yeah, I think those are very possible scenarios. So like for Jones to want to move up, and also that'd be a big money, because I understand the UFC not wanting to pay big money for an Ngannou versus Jones fight. Obviously, it's a big, sexy fight. Like, it's a fight that I want to see. Shit, but
Me
like,
too.
it's not a championship fight. Championships. That's what really sells a lot. So with either DC or Stipe as champion, I think the UFC would be willing to spend some money to get Jon Jones up to heavyweight. I think that's definitely it aligns with their interests a lot more than just a one-off fight with Ngannou for no belt. So we'll see. The only thing that I'm curious, if that ever happens, who the hell's gonna call Francis Ngannou and tell him that? That's gonna be a rough conversation.
Yeah, it's a crazy thing too, right? Because the mystique to like Jon Jones coming up and fighting Ngannou, someone with that much power that just is devastating. Like, people want to see like, can Jon Jones deal with that? He's ran through everyone essentially, hasn't had a lot of difficulties. We saw with Gustafsson and a couple fights where he had some troubles, but like, man, with Ngannou's type of power, like, what would that look like? Like, there's just such a mystique to that fight. It'd be cool to see.
Yeah, for sure. All right, well, let's close out that fight. Official prediction. How do you feel about this one? I'm super split, man. I think for my MMA Junkie official staff picks, which I submitted last week, I believe I went with Miocic. But to be quite frank with you, I'm on the fence on this one.
Yeah, this is a really tough one, man. And I will say this too. Stipe looks in probably the best shape I've ever seen him as far as how lean he's looking. I mean, we don't know really
He's
how
got
these
that new
training
haircut
camps
too,
went.
and those glasses,
Yeah,
looking quite smart.
he's got the swag with it, so
Yeah,
he's feeling himself,
he just
and
needs a
that
Starbucks cup, and that's it.
he needs a boomachino.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, I'm going with DC just based off
Okay.
of the wrestling factor. I feel he's gonna play it a little safer, be smarter, be more disciplined in this fight. I do feel like him falling off the game plan really played a huge role in that last loss. So I think he's gonna come correct in this fight, and possibly have to go the 5 rounds because Stipe is not an easy guy to put away. But I could see a decision, or I could see like a ground and pound stoppage for DC.
Yeah, I definitely I'm not discarding that. Like I said, I'm split, but for some reason I think I'm going with Stipe on this one. I just think his size is gonna be. I feel like, yeah, Cormier obviously can wrestle his ass off, but Stipe is a big boy, and wrestling
Yeah.
him for 5 rounds, I don't know. I don't know if he can do it or not. I'm not saying he can. I'm just saying I don't know. So I think I'm kind of going with Stipe on this one. But we'll see. Yeah, I'm very split on that one. I think it could definitely be a scenario where Cormier just out wrestles him, uses the advantage of the smaller cage, fights a little smarter, than just does a few adjustments from his last performance, because he was on his way to one of his most dominant performances in his entire career in that second Miocic fight.
Yeah, the thing is also, like, you make a good point. It's kind of hard to see DC wrestling him, grinding him for 5 rounds straight. Like, that's the one thing where I'm like, can he even do that for 5 rounds? Like,
Yeah.
he has to maybe hurt Stipe on the feet first, have him kind of wobbled, and then maybe he could finish ground and pound or something like that, or some kind of submission. But yeah, it is hard to see the full 5 rounds of grinding like that for DC. It'd be a rough
Yeah.
go.
Remember when DC threw around Dan Henderson?
Yeah.
It's like replace him with Stipe Miocic. It just doesn't seem. I don't know. It's kind of hard to imagine.
Yeah, it's definitely Stipe's definitely got a little bit better defense. With that, it's harder to take a guy like him down. So it's definitely going to be a rough go, man. But I do think DC is going to come with heavy wrestling.
We'll see. Very, very good fight. I'm excited about that one. I haven't. It just feels big. Like, it feels like, I don't know. It just feels like this is going to be historic. And one way or the other, years from now, we're going to look back at kind of like that rivalry of JDS and Cain Velasquez. It just feels like this is going to be part of UFC and MMA history. It just feels big. I don't know if you agree, but like, there's definitely that sort of, I don't know. It's hard to describe, but there's this specific feeling about that fight that just feels like it can make history.
Oh yeah, I'm with you, man. I mean, and there's like somewhat of a rivalry too with these guys. Trilogy fights are big, and it's not obviously the same Jon Jones kind of hostile environment, but it's still Stipe's got that chip on his shoulder, and he's even said, like, "I'm sorry, DC, but you got to fight me for your last fight," and that sucks.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's talk about the co-main event now. This one surprised a lot of people. At least myself. Before we get into a whole fight, are you surprised that Sean O'Malley is fighting Marlon Vera in the co-main event of UFC 252?
A little bit. I go back and forth with that. I feel like the UFC is trying to be smart with O'Malley and who they match him up with. This is for sure his toughest test, and this is the real deal. Chito is no joke, and well-rounded fighter. He's fought a lot of top-level guys in the UFC, and he's very experienced now in the UFC. So I think this is a real test for O'Malley, and to me, it's his first real test. So I'm surprised in that aspect, but I also know that Chito's not really a heavy wrestler type of style. He's a striker with really good jiu-jitsu, and I do think that is somewhat favorable for O'Malley.
Yeah, I would agree. The only thing that surprised me about the placement of this, like, it makes sense and I get it, and again, it didn't completely catch me off guard, but right below that you got Junior Dos Santos, a former UFC heavyweight champion, fighting Jairzinho Rozenstruik, one of the most exciting prospects and up-and-comers, I think, in the heavyweight division now. So it just felt like the pairing of the heavyweight fights, main and co-main event, kind of have the heavyweight theme. It felt like a thing, but I guess I was wrong. But certainly not complaining about that co-main event. I think it's a great fight. One in your division, so I'm sure you're keeping a close eye on that one. What have you made of O'Malley's progress so far? Because I've interviewed Marlon Chito Vera for quite some time, and they were booked to fight, I believe, in 2018, if I'm not mistaken. That's before O'Malley had his issues with USADA. And, Marlon was telling me, like, I think he's all hype. I think obviously he's got some skill. Like, he's won fights. You can't win fights without having no skill. Especially, you can't make it to the UFC with no skill. You got to be a good fighter. But I think his hype is a little bit over what his skill set means. And to be honest, at that time, I thought his assessment was on point, and I quite agreed with it. Not throwing any shade to O'Malley, just thought that his fame didn't match up with who he was in the rankings and his skill set. But after that Eddie Wineland performance and that Teco Quiñones performance as well, when he came back from that USADA suspension, I'm not saying his hype matches up his skill, but I think it's a different story now. Like, there's definitely real questions about his ceiling. What do you think about O'Malley?
Yeah, I mean, well, there's it's quite obvious that his striking is high level. He's got great accuracy. He's got fast hands, and his confidence is on an all-time high. You can tell by the way he talks. He's a guy who feels invincible. Who feels untouchable right now. And I think I'm most excited because I feel like Chito's a guy that's not just going to back down or take a shot and fold. He's going to be a real test. And that's what I've wanted to see with O'Malley, to kind of deem the hype real or not. You're running through guys, you're hitting guys, they're kind of folding and falling over. That's great and all. That shows that you have, some power, some good timing, good striking. But what happens when things get rough? What happens when you're taking shots, when you're down on your back and Cheeto's, maybe raining ground and pound on you and passing guard and stuff like that? That's where we're going to kind of find out, is this guy for real? Can he be the best in the bantamweight division?
Yeah, for sure. And also I want to sort of add this. Again, I'm not throwing any shade to Sean O'Malley. I think he's great. But I think it's worth mentioning, like, these prospects that are coming up and that are folding people, like you mentioned, they sort of do create like an aura of invincibility, and you kind of like wonder, okay, who can stop them? And especially to casuals, they start thinking like, yo, this guy's the champ. He's better than the champ. You know what I'm saying? But
Yeah.
not so long ago, we saw Edmund Sebastian fall short to Derek Brunson. And after his dismantlement of Brad Tavares, he also was another prospect that just looked. I mean, people were already talking about him potentially being the youngest champion in the UFC. And that's happened many times with prospects where, like, you just get them against the right guy, and that's kind of like a reality check and a wake up call. And I feel like, I'm not saying this will be it. We'll find out on Saturday night. But I feel like this could be it because, as you mentioned, Chito Vera, when has he ever been knocked down? I mean, he fought John Lineker, one of the hardest hitting guys at 135, took all his punches. The guy's tough as shit. He's always there. He's gritty. He's grimy. And, he's got skills. So this is it. I feel like this will determine if O'Malley is legit or not, because I have no doubt in my mind on who Chito Vera is. And he's a very game opponent here.
Yeah, I don't think Marlon Vera's ever been finished in the UFC. Yeah. Am I right?
I don't think so. Let me double check, but
yeah, I don't think he has. And with that said, I mean that says it all right there.
He's
like
got
you're
6 losses, and those all losses have been by decision. So he's never been submitted or KO.
Yeah, so O'Malley's facing a real top guy right now, and this is somebody who, like you said before, styles make fights. We saw with Edmund Shabazi, and Brunson shut him down, and I do think there's differences because I think wrestling is such a huge thing. I think with O'Malley, he's a strong starter, like he says, and Vera's not so much of a fast starter. That could benefit O'Malley in this fight, but with Vera, he might have to change that. He might have to go at him right away and push him against the cage and make him defend takedowns, make him tire out his arms a little bit, slow the fight down a little bit. O'Malley wants to start where he's throwing, flashy stuff, kicks, crazy, straight right hands at you early on. He wants to kind of throw you off your game and not let you settle in. I think that Marlon Vera has to be aware of that and come forward and kind of shut that down right away. Because if he doesn't, and O'Malley gets into that swag that he has and he starts landing strikes, it's going to be trouble for him. But no matter what happens in this fight, if O'Malley could take a guy and Vera out, like, that's it. You gain all the respect of the people, I think. That's just my opinion. So I'm interested to see how that plays out.
Yeah. And this is a little bit of outside of the fight, but just speaking about O'Malley, I mean, you've called him out. You wanted to fight, and I know that fight was actually getting some traction online. I saw it, and it sounded like a very good fight. What have you made of sort of his, I don't know, his existence in the bantamweight division, him being a player there? What have you made about sort of the Sugar Show?
Yeah, I think he's great for the division. In all honesty, fighting aside, like I like the guy's personality and how he approaches the game, and and his mindset is strong. He's definitely he believes in himself 100%. You could see that he has that aura about him. That Conor McGregor type of aura. Different personality, more of like a cold, just stoic type of guy. But yeah, I think he's great for the division. He's an exciting fighter to watch, and anytime you have that type of guy that shows invincibility and that undefeated streak, people want to see what will happen if they lose. How will they react to that? What will it be like? Because Because, man, I'll tell you right now, when you think you can't be broken and you get broken, it's something very hard to deal with in this game. That's when I find true respect for fighters is when how they react and how they respond to failing, to facing that first defeat.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, 100%. That tests a lot of fighters. A lot of fighters never recover from that.
Yeah,
it's a tough thing to overcome for sure. Yeah. And so overall, what are you feeling here? What's your pick?
My instinct is to go with OMalley. I think he's going to land something that's going to hurt Vera. I don't think he's going to clean cut knock him out cold, but I think he's going to TKO him, maybe hurt him with something and follow up with a barrage where the ref has to step in, some kind of TKO. I just feel this way because I think that Marlon Vera has been falling in love with his striking. He's working with Jason Perillo, who's a great boxing coach. And I think Marlon Vera has made a lot of improvements. He's looked better and better on his feet each fight out. He's getting more and more aggressive. His jiu-jitsu is very high level. He's black belt jiu-jitsu. He submits a lot of guys. He's dangerous off his back. But will the fight go to the ground? Will he enforce wrestling? And will he really pressure OMalley early on and make him defend takedowns and try to trip him up or something in the clinch? I just don't see him doing that. I see him going in and being a dog and trying to fight OMalley in an area where I think OMalley holds the advantages with his reach, with his timing, his speed. I could see OMalley catching him. I'm going with TKO for OMalley.
Yeah, I agree with everything that you're saying, but maybe it's my Latino bias. But I'm gonna go with Vera. I think he's game here. I think he's tough as shit, as we mentioned. He can take the best punches. And then I do wonder, and he, for example, made a good point when I was talking to him. He's like, Johnny Eduardo knocked out Eddie Wineland. It was actually a very similar knockout. It was actually a pretty bad knockout, just like OMalley's. But, he just didn't have, I guess, the hype of OMalley and everything that he's got. So not a lot was made out of it. So, again, I'm not saying that that OMalley isn't the real deal, but I've just seen it so much from covering the sport that, these prospects created this invincible aura. And then, we get a reality check once they verse someone that's more their level. Again, I can totally see a scenario where OMalley runs through Marlon Vera, completely plausible. But going with Vera on this, and we'll see. But it's a great fight. I think solid candidate for fight of the night.
Yeah, I hope you're right. To be honest, I want to see Chito win. But I just see it that way in my head. I just envision him going in and ending up striking with him a little bit too much. But Vera's very well rounded, and I think that's the difference between some of the other guys that OMalley fought. Wineland knockout, it was a beautiful knockout, but
it was nice.
Where was Wineland's defense? Like, it looked like he just was standing there, hands down, and just absorbed the right hand. Like, there was no reaction, there was no defense. Like, I feel like Vera's a much smarter fighter. He's fought better competition, so this is a real test, and we'll see what happens. I hope he does get it done though.
Again, it sounds like I'm trashing OMalley, but I'm not, I swear. Also, Eddie Wineland's 36. You gotta keep that in mind. And in MMA years, like, he's been around the block for several times. I mean, he's a guy that's been around for quite some time. So, we know that damage and longevity in the sport usually, takes a toll on your chin one way or the other. So we'll see. Very exciting fight. By the way, your division, 135, low key one of the best. No, not one. The best division right now, I think.
Yeah.
It's hot. It's got tons of everything you want. Prospects, contenders, legends. It's got a good mix of everything.
Yeah, it seems like the top 15 right now, even beyond, I mean, exactly. Like, everybody's a tough out at 135 right now. And at the top, it's just craziness. Marlon Moraes, Aljamain Sterling, Peter Yan. You got Aldo came down. Obviously, he's an older vet, but he's still hanging in there. Frankie Edgar just came down. He's fighting Pedro Munoz. Like, there's craziness going on at bantamweight. Yeah. It's really exciting.
And like you mentioned, even outside of the top 15, like, I know you're not ranked right now, but I'd like your chances against, several of the guys that won at the top 15. And I can say the same thing for many of the other guys. It seems it's so competitive right now, and that's what makes the division so much fun.
100%, man. I feel like me versus Ricky Simon, there's a lot of, fans saying this fight's really exciting. They're looking forward to it. So I feel like this fight could be, two top 10 guys going at it. Like, it's that exciting of a fight. Very competitive. Everyone's solid at 135.
Yeah, for sure. All right, so let's talk about now the bout below that. It's a heavyweight bout between former UFC champion Junior Dos Santos and Jairzinho Rozenstruik. So these guys are teammates, which is quite funny.
Yeah.
Well, teammates. ATT is like a big gym, and there's like gyms within ATT, kind of. There's like different groups and teams, I guess. But this is a good bout. I pretty much like it. Really like it. Junior Dos Santos, obviously a former champ, a guy that just doesn't go away. He's had some tough losses, but he always come back and gets a win here or there, important wins to sort of stick around the top 5 of the division. So what do you make of this booking? You know, Rozenstruik also coming off a pretty bad knockout against Alistair Overeem. What do you make of this booking and where this fight sits in the heavyweight rankings?
Yeah, I think, both of these guys are coming off finish losses, I believe. I'm not quite sure. I know Rozenstruik, brutally knocked out by Ngannou. And then JDS is kind of facing the same thing. So it's a good matchup stylistically too. Both good strikers. JDS more of a boxing style, Rozenstruik kickboxing. I think range is going to be a huge factor in this fight. JDS probably wants to mix up the boxing with the wrestling and maybe even take the fight to the ground, where I think Rozenstruik is a little bit less, well versed than JDS down there. I think that would be a smart tactic for him. But both of these guys, you gotta question where their chins are at right now, coming off bad knockouts, and JDS obviously been in the game for a long time and taken more damage overall, but I do wonder where their heads are at. Both of them. JDS looks in phenomenal shape. He's got the mustache. He's ready to go. So I think JDS might come in smart with his game plan and mix up the boxing and the wrestling and get it done.
Yeah, we obviously know JDS for his boxing, and his handiwork throughout his run in the UFC, and Rozenstruik has put on some pretty good knockouts as well. And obviously, he's got an extensive kickboxing background. But as far as MMA striking, it kind of sounds like you're giving Junior Dos Santos here the edge.
Yeah, because I just feel like mixing things up altogether in MMA is very detrimental to this stylistic matchup. I feel like, because Rozenstruik is kind of like a slow mover, and he's got so much power, but he doesn't really mix up things as well as JDS. And JDS has pretty good footwork and good movement, but it's really who gets caught first. I feel like if JDS can kind of mix up the boxing and change levels and make him, threaten the takedown a little bit and keep him guessing, he could have a lot of success. But he just can't get caught by a big shot by Rozenstruik early.
Yeah. And as far as like the heavyweight rankings and all that, like this fight obviously involving 2 big names, one a former champion, the other guy recently entered title contention, especially prior to that last defeat against Ngannou. What do you think a win does to either guy here? I mean, it kind of feels like, I'm not saying it's not much, obviously it's something, but it seems the line at heavyweight just seems quite lengthy with Ngannou and Curtis Blades at the top.
Yeah, I feel like with those two a little bit above them, and then Ngannou, knocking out Rozenstruik clean like that kind of hurts him. But a big performance could put you a couple of fights away. I think, JDS is, him winning, it's like a resurrection of a career, a guy that's showing longevity, somewhat like Overeem, staying in there and involved. But, I don't think either of these guys get a title shot necessarily with a win, especially we don't really know what's going to happen with the Stipe DC thing. We could have a champion retire and leave the belt, behind, and we don't know what's going to happen with that. So there's definitely things to figure out and situate at heavyweight. So, but a big win is going to put him, I'd say, maybe 2 fights away.
Yeah, I agree with that assessment. Official prediction?
I'm going to go with JDS. I think he might get it done by decision. I think he's going to fight a little smarter, not just exchange with Rozenstruik, try to utilize mixing up takedowns with his boxing. And I think he will take Rozenstruik down, and I think we'll see some flaws there from Jairzinho on the ground, on his back. Not the most active guy with a good guard or anything like that. So I got JDS decision.
This is going to be interesting to see the results because you and I are disagreeing on absolutely everything. I'm going to go with Rozenstruik here. I agree with your assessment. Like, I think, you're on point about everything that you're saying about, obviously, JDS being the more experienced guy, the more mobile guy, certainly looks to be a lot lighter on his feet, the better boxing, quick, in and out. And JDS has sort of shifted his style in a way where he can fight that way to avoid getting hit because Obviously, his chin is no longer what it used to. But
Yeah.
Jairzinho's got the technique, I feel like, and he might not be the quickest guy. And yes, JDS might be able to mix it up, but I think Jairzinho just needs that one strike. That's it.
Yeah.
Just that one strike within the 15 minutes, and he can finish the fight. So I'm gonna go with Rozenstruik, but 100% see a scenario where JDS just outboxes him, uses the range, and classic vintage veteran performance, and pulls out the UD there.
All right, all right. Yeah, the viewers want some disagreements. It's good for the show.
Boom. All right, so the
Boom,
last
baby.
fight in your division, this one's going to be interesting. Jon Dodson taking on Marabu. I always have trouble pronouncing his last name. Davilishvili?
Yeah, Davalishvili or something. I think that's it.
Fun fight. Veteran versus an up-and-comer. We'll see what happens there. What do you think of this bout?
Honestly, this is one of the most intriguing fights on the card to me, just stylistically. We've seen a guy like Marabu go in there and just maul people and just constant takedowns and a lot of action, a lot of volume. And I feel like Dodson is a guy that is a real test for him because he's a hard guy to take down. I always said this. I feel Dodson is one of the most frustrating, difficult guys to fight stylistically in the bantamweight division. He's fast. He's jittery. He's very evasive. He's got power. And he's got great takedown defense. So he's a southpaw stance. This is definitely a different opponent that Marabu's ever seen. We're gonna find out early though. Can Marabu take him down? Can he hold him down? Can he tire Dodson out? We have seen Dodson fade in fights as the later rounds go. So I'm looking for stuff like that. But I'm also looking for maybe Dodson to test Marabu's chin a little bit with that left hand. He has a lot of power. So really interesting fight, man. This is one of the hardest fights to pick on the card for me. But I've been trained with Marabu before. I've sparred with him. He is the machine, like his nickname says. I mean, the guy does not stop. It's honestly, it's something special to see and feel. His cardio is second to none. I've really never seen anything like that. Just mentally, the way he's resilient, with his takedowns. I could see a scenario where Marabu gets a decision just based off of constantly making Dodson work and taking him down and kind of just more volume overall. But I'd like to see him test it a little bit. Maybe have Dodson land a couple of hard shots and see what happens.
Yeah. No, I agree. This is one of the toughest fights to pick. And to your point, I don't feel like Dodson gets enough credit. Even in his defeats, they're all either split decisions or he always gives a tough outing to anybody. Yeah,
Peter Yan, right? He had
exactly.
Rivera.
Yeah. So the dude's definitely a handful for anyone. This is an ultimate test for him, and he's coming off a nice win over Nathaniel Wood, a guy that many consider, an up and coming prospect. So definitely, he's a game fighter here, despite being a veteran and kind of already being in an older stage. He's 35 years old, but still a very game opponent. I agree. I think I'm gonna go with Marabu via decision. It could be recency bias because obviously Marabu has been on just tearing it up, and he's been on a streak. But it just feels like he has the capabilities to outwork Dodson, even if he's not successful with every single one of his takedowns. Just the fact that he's the one attacking, he's dictating the pace, pushing him against the cage, right, forcing him to scramble this and that. I feel like that will add up in his favor in a unanimous decision win, I think.
Yeah, I mean, as far as the judges go, a guy like Marabu, he's just all over the place. He's constantly active. I feel like he's going to have a lot more volume to his strikes. They might not be the prettiest striking style, but like you said, he's going to be in Dodson's face. And even if he fails at the first, second, third takedown, the guy's not going to stop trying to take you down. I can tell you that. So, yeah, Marabu by decision for sure.
All right, so we agree on something, finally.
There we go.
Yeah. All right. Well, we're not going to go over the prelims, but before I talk about this, I do want to just remind everybody we are taking your questions at the end of this video, so feel free to drop anything on the live chat, and we'll get to it in just a couple minutes here. So make sure to get your questions in there for Boom Kelleher. And real quick, any fight you have your eye on the preliminary card? Any fight that you're excited for that you want to highlight here?
You know what? Jim Miller versus Vince Pichel, right? Miller had trouble with that Lyme disease for a while. It seems as if it's not a hindrance anymore. He's feeling way better energy and training, and it's crazy to see a vet like that come back and kind of have a little bit of a resurgence. Taking out Roosevelt Roberts in his
Yep.
last fight, who's a up and coming prospect, and that was impressive stuff. And I think Vince Michel might even be a better matchup for him than that last one. As far as size and reach, and Miller with his jiu-jitsu, high-level black belt, I could see him getting a submission in this fight.
Yeah, for sure. I love this chapter of Jim Miller. It's not even about chasing the title anymore because I feel like he understands that like, it's
Yeah.
I mean, it could always be a thing, right? We've seen crazier things, but at age 36, he's going to have to go on a crazy win streak. Plus 155 is just so packed with talent, especially at the top, very top heavy. But man, he's got like a bunch of records, like most submissions for whatever, most performance of the night bonuses, most fights in UFC history. I mean, and right now he just keeps pushing that even further and further, and that's kind of been exciting to watch. I mean, every card he's breaking always some kind of record. So always nice seeing a veteran, have success, in his later stages, because usually, it's for the most part, in the later stages, guys that have been around for quite some time have trouble with the younger guys, obviously being, new to the game and bringing new skills. So always exciting to see him. So definitely excited for that bout. And also Jim Miller, I've interviewed him a couple times. Pretty chill dude, pretty cool dude, pretty likable guy. Very excited for that bout. I would like to highlight the women's strawweight bout between Ashley Yoder and Livinha Souza. Livinha, I don't know how much you've been paying attention to her, but she's very much like the female version of the Diaz brothers / Brazilian version as well. That chick is gangster as fuck, dude. And she's got like this street style, and she, I just love everything about her. She's great. So looking forward to that fight.
Well, now I'm more excited for that fight because I didn't know much about her, and I've seen Yoder fight before. Seems pretty scrappy and decent on the ground, but I'm gonna be looking out for that one then.
Oh, dude, Livinha also a former Invicta champion, and her nickname is actually the Brazilian Gangster. I'm telling you,
Are we gonna see a Brazilian slap?
I wouldn't be surprised, dude. She's got that swag. She's got that what's up, let's go, and that's always a fun style to watch. But yeah, there's other great fights on this card as well, besides those two. But yeah, I would say those two are the ones that I'm looking forward to the most in the prelim card. So, all right, with that out of the way, let's get to your questions. Again, reminder, if you want to ask questions to myself or Brian, feel free to drop them in the YouTube live chat, and we'll get to that now. So the first, not really a question, but a comment. And Sin MMA says, Brian looking sexy, though. I'm telling you, it's that lighting, that selfie lighting.
it's the gold chains and the white tee, baby. We're looking fresh.
Fresh combo, always. So Jay Medina here, a question. He says, for Brian, ever think about leaving New York and training at a big gym such as ATT? Have you ever thought about moving elsewhere and stuff?
Yeah, I've thought about that a bunch of times, man. It's a tough decision. I feel like I'm the most fucking indecisive person out there, to be honest with you. I'm like,
I might give you a run for your money, bro.
I got all these thoughts going on. I've thought about Colorado. I went to train with Factory X, Mark Montoya. It was great. It made me feel like the old days when I used to train it with Team Bomb Squad and Ithaca. Just that family vibe where like all the fighters are coming up together, and it's just a different kind of vibe. Here on Long Island, I'm kind of spread wide. I'm going to my 10th Planet Jiu-Jitsu gym, then I'm going to Long Island MMA, then I'm scheduling one-on-one sessions with different guys that are beneficial from my specific fight. I'm training with my brother. Like, I'm all over the place here. So I've thought about that before. It's so hard to leave home. I'm a homebody. There's no place like home, so I don't see myself leaving, but I do love California. That'd probably be where I would go.
Yeah. Let me ask you this, to follow up on Jay Medina's question. Has the pandemic at all sort of made you rethink things about your career, such as perhaps switching teams or training somewhere else? Because speaking from personal experience, and I know we do two completely different things. Not that I've rethought about my career choices, but overall, just in life, like it's definitely something like this of this magnitude has definitely like made me think of things that I otherwise wouldn't, as far as my life and where I'm going in the future and stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a big deal, and it's definitely something that touches you and it makes you kind of question things. But for me, like, I'm overthinking too much. Where at this point in my life, I'm like, let's just settle down and trust the process and try to remain calm. I feel like those are key ingredients for me to go into these fights. Just remain calm, confident, trust the process. Like those are things I constantly repeat to myself going into these fights, and I feel like the psychology of the sport is so important, and to be in the right mind state is a big thing for me. It comes out in my performances, so I feel like for me, I'm trying not to overthink these kind of things. You can't really change this.
Yeah,
It is what it is. It's happening
it is
almost
what it is.
everywhere.
Yeah, yeah,
So
for
yeah.
sure. All right, let's move on to the next question. And okay, we kind of touched about a little bit about this at the beginning of the video. But Sin MMA asks, DC's coach Javi Mendes says if he wins against Stipe, they might do Jones 3. Thoughts? I'm in. Like I said, I think that's a fight that makes sense. And usually when a guy's 0-2 against someone, I'm kind of like, all right, just stop. That Jonah Hill meme. I'm like,
Yeah.
but in this one, I think there's something. Like there's definitely like a thing to it. Jones has been slowing down. Still a great fighter, don't get me wrong, but certainly the way he was running through people, that doesn't seem to exist anymore, at least from his last two performances. While DC has looked great, also I think there's definitely a different fight at heavyweight. The
Yeah.
rivalry was quite fun, to be quite honest with you. There's still something there besides, it dying down a little bit. I'm all in. I don't know about you.
No, I'm with you, man. I feel like that rivalry, it's going to bring excitement no matter what, especially with the mystique of Jon Jones coming up to heavyweight for the first time. The way DC looks at heavyweight, like you said, he packs a lot more power. Just a better fighter overall, it seems, at heavyweight, not dealing with that weight cut and everything. So, I feel like I would love to see that. I know it typically, like you said, 0-2, you don't really need to see that, but with the differences in heavyweight and the fact that DC's performing how he is and potentially being that heavyweight champion versus the light heavyweight champion, like that would be amazing.
Yeah, for sure. I'm all in. Real quick on this one, we don't have to get super deep into this, but Sin MMA following up with, can we get a prediction on Khabib versus Gaethje, Israel versus Costa? So I'll go first. I got Khabib, I think. Yeah. and then I got Izzy. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, in short, I go with the same picks. I just, man, that Gaethje right now just looks terrifying. Like just how he's turned his brawling style into a calculated style with it. It's just scary. Like the way he beat Tony Ferguson, who was a guy who we thought could be the challenge for Khabib. It's just like, whoa, like we don't even care about that fight almost. That's how bad Gaethje beat him. So I'm so excited to see how that plays out. Can Gaethje stop those takedowns? But I can't go against Khabib and Izzy right now.
Yeah, it's hard to, but two very game challengers. I would say though, I feel like Gaethje has a tougher opponent, but also a better chance than Costa. I don't know. I don't know how you feel.
Yeah, I mean, because Gaethje, like he says, his wrestling is great defensively. He doesn't really use it offensively, but he preaches that it's so hard to take him down, let alone hold him down, and that's what we've seen Khabib do to every single fighter he's faced. So the mystique to that is like, can he do that to that person who seems so confident in avoiding that and not letting his back get to the cage? I'm so excited to see how that plays out, especially with a guy like Gaethje's power and his viciousness in there. It's going to be interesting.
Yeah, for sure. That one's the one that has like this weird feeling where if anyone can pull off the upset against Khabib, it'd be that guy. It used to be
Yeah.
Tony Ferguson, but the torch got passed down to him, I feel like.
What do you think? Do you still want to see that fight happen eventually? It's kind of like thrown off a little bit now,
Bro,
but
that fight, and not even the fight, the potential of the fight and all the drama, like took such a big toll on me mentally, dude,
I
that
know.
that I don't even want to think about it. Like I just feel like, dude, let's be honest. I'm real with everyone, so I'm gonna keep it real. This will be no difference. But Ferguson got fucked. Let's
Oh
be
yeah.
real. Like he deserved to fight. The fact that the dude didn't challenge for an undisputed belt is criminal. Is criminal. And I know again
It's
there were a
crazy,
bunch of
yeah.
crazy circumstances such as him tripping over a wire and tearing up his shit in his knee, his ACL, and being out for a while. Khabib weight cut, and there was so many, the pandemic. I mean, there was so many things that that went in there outside of the UFC's control to put on that fight. And I get all that, but like it just broke my heart to know that he may never potentially get a chance to fight for the undisputed belt. Again, I'm not saying he can't get back there, but just that win streak was legendary. 12 fights in a row, just destroying everybody. Gets an opponent switch from one of the best wrestlers in the history of MMA to one of the most dangerous strikers in the history of MMA. Just a complete curveball. I just think Tony Ferguson got the short end of the stick there.
Oh yeah, he's had some bad luck along the way, that's for sure. You got to feel for that guy. Hopefully he can get his way back up, but who knows if it'll even beat Khabib at that point.
Exactly, and also like I'm just curious to see how Ferguson looks because dude, he took a shit ton of damage against Gaethje at what age, like 36 that he's at. So again, he could it's Tony Ferguson. The dude kicks metal poles on a daily basis, so he could be completely normal and fine. 100%, but like you also don't know, so I'm just curious to see how he looks, and the MMA gods brought on a global pandemic to not make Khabib versus Ferguson, and I wonder what they're gonna bring next. Like the sun's gonna explode or some shit. I don't know.
Yeah, it's a meteorite for sure.
Yeah, meteorite. Yep. So I don't know, but I'm down to see it. I think either Gaethje or Ferguson, those two have the most interesting styles for Khabib.
What do you think about the Izzy and Costa that might be in the small cage, but now they're saying they might delay that event for to go back to Fight Island, right?
Yeah. So yeah, with this whole COVID thing, the UFC, if you notice, they announce fights and they announce dates, but they don't announce location because they're kind of just playing it out. Like this trilogy between DC and Stipe that we're gonna see this weekend, it didn't have a location for a minute.
TBA.
Yeah, until they're like, okay, well, COVID relatively is I guess things are still fairly, I don't even want to say okay, but like things are still open, I guess, so they can have fights. But the moment shit gets worse in this country, they're gonna have to, shift gears and switch everything around. So yeah, it could be in Abu Dhabi, especially from here to late September. That fight's supposed to go down. Things could get bad and Vegas could shut down again. Who knows?
Yeah, that could be a factor in that fight. I think the small cage might favor Costa a little bit with his style, so that would be interesting.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's also one of those fights where the cage could influence a lot. Because, Izzy's definitely going to be on the back foot. He says he's going to get in there and trade with Costa, but I don't think so. I think he's going to be in the back foot, using his range. I mean, it's the smartest thing to do. You don't want to roll the dice
with his style. Like space is his best friend. He likes space to feint and kind of slip and duck and move. So he needs that.
Yeah. By the way, I've also been enjoying that build up and that rivalry. Their trash talk has been fun.
Yeah, that's been hilarious, especially with the accent with Costa. With the kind of the broken English, but he still kind of gets it.
Yeah. No, I love it. Costa's great. And Izzy's not afraid to fire back. I mean, obviously that dude's born to trash talk as well. So that's gonna be a fun one. I feel like that's gonna be a rivalry that's gonna extend for quite some time because they're both young guys, and
for sure.
I just don't see either guy, whoever loses, I just don't see them like falling off. You know what I'm saying? I feel like they're gonna be at the top for a bit. So we might see like 2 fights out of them, maybe more, depending on how they go.
Yeah, I could see that for sure. I agree.
All right. Another question here. We'll save this one because he's asking about your fight with Ricky Simon. So we'll save that to the later part to the last question on this stream.
Okay.
Okay. Scott Kelly asks, do you think Dan Hardy's going to fight again? He's been saying for the past 2 years he's training to come back, but nothing ever materializes. What do you think? He fights again?
Yeah, that's a weird thing, right? Because he's been like talking about that for months and months now, and he's even like kind of brought up a couple of different matchups. I forget who he mentioned he wanted to fight, but we haven't seen any kind of action moving forward with it. So I'm not quite sure. All I see him is hitting his bag over and over, different working different combos. I feel like if he's gonna come back, he's got to make a move soon. You know, time is not your friend. So I'd say it's unlikely at this point.
Yeah. Yeah, this is a weird one because I feel like with a name like Dan Hardy, obviously he's a former UFC title challenger. I'm not saying he's Conor McGregor, he's the biggest star in the world, but he's got a name. I feel like if
Yeah.
he wanted to get a fight, he'd get a fight, right? I don't think
Yeah.
he'd have too much trouble getting the UFC to give him, throw a fight his way. So I know he's been wanting to come back for a while. I'm pulling up his record right now, but yeah, nothing has materialized. Not saying that his talk is not real, but like you said, father time gets everyone. So if you want to come
Maybe
back, you want to do it ASAP. And he's nearing 40. He's 38.
that's what I'm saying. Maybe he fights Herb Dean.
Yeah. I'd watch that.
Yeah, that's the only one right now for him, you know?
Herb Dean used to fight, right?
Yeah, he trained, right?
He like fought professional.
Oh, wow, that's crazy. Yeah, I remember hearing something about that. Like, I don't know how many fights he had,
Oh,
right? But
he had a good amount of fights, and he fought some tough dudes. You know who he fought?
wow,
Joe Diesel Riggs. Remember Joe
really?
Riggs? Yeah.
Yeah, I remember him. Yeah, that's crazy.
He
I didn't know
fought
that.
some tough dudes at his time. At that time, Joe Riggs was the man. I'm gonna pull up his record and give you sort of his fights. A lot of people sleep on Herb Dean and just referees in general. Like, oh, these guys don't know how to fight. Like, and then they don't know. They should know how to fight because they don't know what their fighters are going in there. But most referees have some experience of MMA. He fought 5 times, and yeah, he fought Joe Riggs in his second professional fight in Rage in the Cage 43 back in 2003.
Wow, that's wild, man. That's
Yeah.
good though. I think it's good with the refs that have experience like that. Definitely helps out a lot.
Also, I saw, what's this guy's name? Herzog? Herzog?
Yeah, he was my ref for a couple fights ago.
Yeah. Apparently, he trains and he used to be like a pretty decent wrestler too.
He looks like he's in good shape, man.
Yeah.
You could tell, he's a lean guy, and he was a really good ref. Like he's really alert in there. You could feel it.
Mm. By the way, I know this is off topic, but what would you make of? Have you had fights refereed by Herb Dean?
I haven't, no.
Okay. What have
I'm
you
not
made of,
big time
of
enough
all
yet.
that, of the whole shit, like, him stopping fights too late and all that?
I feel like it's such a hard job, and you're being criticized by the world, and it's split second timing, and it's a lot of money on the line, show money, win money. I understand it more in bigger fights, and unfortunately, it should all be equal across the board. But I get it, it's just bigger stakes. Sometimes you want to see it, let it go on a little longer. But as far as the rules go and the safety of the fighters and what they're there for, like you want to see refs step in and protect fighters from further damage for sure. It's hard though. It's hard for them to get a gauge on how hurt somebody is, and be able to step in at the perfect time every single time.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I think the credit to a certain degree the criticism that Herb Dean has gotten has been fair, but not to the extent that he's gotten it.
Yeah.
But I'd like to see a few changes with this because I think Dan Hardy raises a few good points, which the main one is accountability. Like if he's had a track record of letting fights go on too long, and I feel like there needs to be at least some public acknowledgement of that, and also like some sort of accountability, like in any job, like even my job, like we have performance reviews, like, and they tell you what you're doing well and what you should keep doing and what you shouldn't, what you're
Yeah.
lacking of or whatever. So same thing with referees. It's like any other job. They should like go back, look at his calls that are controversial and explain to them why they're controversial and try to pinpoint things like, oh, look, when a fighter shows this is because they're really hurt, and try to sort of, through conversation and review, just make referees better. But I don't think that exists. I don't think that's a thing. That's the thing.
Yeah.
That's what Hardy's calling for.
Yeah, it's definitely a good point by Hardy. I think they might just kind of go unanswered. They make these mistakes and they kind of just move on from them. They don't really
Exactly.
correct them or pinpoint where they went wrong.
And props to Dean because he addressed it and at least he put on a statement and explaining his reasoning, which gives you a better insight on why he took the decisions that he took. Most referees don't say anything. Like there's a bad call, they just never acknowledge it.
Yeah, I like that. I saw that he posted that video. At least, answer for, your mistake, or put out some kind of statement. I thought that was good on his part for
Yeah.
sure.
I think they should put a ref cam as well, but not for the actual broadcast, because I think it's kind of it always looks kind of shitty, to be honest. But like, just so in case something like this happens, we have a point of reference, because we're comfortable sitting at home chilling, looking at it from all kinds of views from above. Being in
Yeah.
there is something different. So I mean, that you're in that cage. So in case something bad happens, at least there's tape to review from referee's point of view.
Yeah, it's a hard job, man. I gotta be honest, because like you said,
It's
I've
tough.
been in
Yeah.
there and I felt it, with Jason Herzog, going back to my Hunter Azure fight where I knocked him out. Like, I knew he was out, but Herzog didn't quite want to step in yet because he didn't see what I saw. I saw his eyes in the back of his head, but Herzog was from a different angle, too far away to kind of see that. And I had hammer fisted him two more times, and I didn't really want to do that, but the ref was waiting for the right time to step in, and he took two extra shots. Sometimes it's hard to see.
Yeah, no, for sure. And also, I'm no fighter, but I have been training in boxing for a little bit,
You've
and
been hitting that
like,
bag, man.
what's up?
You've been hitting that bag. I see
I've
you.
been hitting that bag. I've been getting my ass whooped a couple times here and there in sparring, and like,
There we go.
like when you connect, like you feel it. You know what I'm saying? That's a feeling
Yeah.
that is exclusive to you and to your opponent. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
And it might not
Yes.
look like much, but like, you both know exactly when you connect and when you don't.
Yeah, 100%. You connect on that punch, and right there, like that snappy feeling, like,
Yeah.
oh, okay, like that was legit.
Yeah, and that's exclusive to the people fighting. That's it. So it's a lot easier for someone to connect, be like, all right, like this guy, this guy's hurt, rather than watching from above. All right, so I don't want to keep you for much longer. You've already been super generous with your time. So this was the last question, and we'll end on this. I'll also follow up with you next week to get your thoughts on more extensive thoughts on the actual fight. But you got a fight coming up, right? So you're fighting Ricky Simon. So Sin MMA wants to just get your overall thoughts on the next fight. He says, Brian, thoughts on his next fight against Ricky Simon?
Yeah, this is a great fight, man. I'm excited for this fight because this is a guy that brings it. He's a well-rounded guy. He likes to strike. He's also a good wrestler. We're similar size, we're both able to fight at 145 and not have to cut a shit ton of weight, which is nice. He's a guy that's been in and out of the top 15, I believe, which is good for me. To get a win over someone like him puts me right back into relevancy. I think this is a gritty fight. This is a fight where I think it's it could go to decision. It could be a fight of the night type of fight, and I love those. I like fights where guys are willing to exchange and get after it with me, and not trying to just kind of hold me or pin me down. But yeah, I'm really excited for it. I think I have a little bit more power than Ricky. I think he's a grinder though, and he's had a couple good performances. Ray Borg he just beat, so that was a good fight. I've watched some tape. It's gonna be good, man. I'm coming for the finish like always, so I can't wait.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, he's coming off a nice win over Ray Borg, so that's a nice bout. For you, I know he's not in the rankings, but certainly coming off a win over Ray Borg puts him on the map and in people's minds. So that's going to be a good fight. Excited for it. I feel like you have a bit more size on him too, right? I've seen obviously you in person and him as well. I feel like will probably be the bigger guy. I feel like.
Yeah, I've seen him. He fought on that same card, Jacksonville, against Borg, or he was there for cornering someone. I'm not sure, but I remember seeing him in person, and I felt like size-wise, I had a little bit of edge on him. I think same thing for power, just like finishing ability with one punch. I have.
Certainly, yeah.
He might have that wrestling edge a little bit, but I'm gonna have to stop that and put these hands on him.
For sure. All right, man. Well, you guys can follow Brian at BrianBoom135 on Twitter. Is that the same thing for Instagram?
Yeah, same thing.
Yeah, so you can find him on all social media platforms at Brian Boom135. His at is at the bottom there. You might be able to have a little bit of hard time seeing it because of his white shirt, but you guys can look him up. Find him. He's a great follow on Twitter. So definitely recommend. Also, you want to pitch in, you want to plug in your YouTube stuff because you've been doing some great work over in your YouTube channel as well.
Yeah, on the YouTube we got the Boom Breakdown. Just my name, Brian Kelleher. You can find me on there, or just search Boom Breakdown. I'm sure you'll see some come up. But yeah, just trying to stay active with the breakdowns for the card. So check that out. Thank you.
Yeah, for sure. Awesome insight on his YouTube channel. Definitely recommend his videos. So make sure you subscribe to his channel. Also subscribe to this channel because it's great as well. So make sure you to hit the subscribe button on both ends. All right, man. I appreciate the time, brother. Thank you so much. Appreciate the insight. Always fun talking MMA with you. And we'll catch up later to talk more extensively about your fight with Ricky Simon, which I'm very excited for.
Definitely, man. Thanks a lot for having me. It was fun.
For sure. All right, guys. Take it easy.